Anger can be the most helpful emotion if you let it, but we're taught to feel shame about our anger.
Be nice.
Don't yell,
Get it in check.
chill out.
Good girls don't act like that.
Oh, and most of us feel stuck because if we hold it in, it's toxic for our bodies. And if we let it out, it's toxic for our relationships. So now what? We're going to show you how anger can be your most helpful emotion if you know what to do with it. So, Tara, what does anger mean to you?
Gosh, anger is actually my most exciting emotion. And this is when I decided to use it for myself and then use it for my clients. To me, anger is all about fuel. And so instead of using the fuel, like if you think of fuel for a rocket, it launches it somewhere. Most people use that fuel and disperse it on others, like you were saying in the beginning about using it and expressing it in relationships and just being really toxic. To me, it launches you somewhere. So you have to ask, like, where do I actually want to go? How do I want to use this? How about you?
Yeah, I love that because you're asking yourself what matters most to you. And that is what makes me love anger so much is that it gives you a direct line into what matters most. When anger comes up, it tells you, I care. And
Mm-hmm.
so finding that message under it, trying to figure out what it is you care about, actually shows you where your values lie. And like you said, once you figure out your values, you can put rocket fuel on it and start taking action towards living the life that demonstrates those values.
I love that. I think that more of us need to take a little bit of time to ask ourselves questions so that we actually honor who we are and care about what we're doing. There's such a thing that's going on in the world where everybody's so gravitating towards helping everybody else and knowing them better than themselves. And that can also create anger. And so, one of the ones where I find a lot of people, including myself, have gotten angry before is when somebody else acts, I'm going to say in quotes, selfish.
Mm.
Right. And so, going back to your thing about I care, it's, well, what if I could also be somebody who is selfish in a way that doesn't feel like I don't care about others too? Right. So, how can I center in myself, use that to make some choices for me, but also ask them to bless everyone else too?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I feel like one of the biggest ways that anger is misunderstood is
mhm,
that I kind of see it like a big brother. And
mhm,
often what happens with anger is you get a whole bunch of emotions all at the same time. Like when you were talking about, that example, maybe you have envy or sadness or shame, even all coming at you at the same time. And then anger comes up as sort of the loudest in the crowd.
mhm.
And it's that big brother that wants you to be safe and it wants to protect you and it wants to bubble up and come out. And so for me, my very first step when I start experiencing this feeling is to welcome it, is to kind of high five it, and say, oh my goodness, thank you for showing up for me. And
Mhm.
that allowed me to shift away from the other two options, which were to shove it down, go away, I don't want you, or to let it out and damage the relationships, right? That completely changed the way that I allowed it to enter my life. And then, like you said, it changed the way that I started interacting with myself. What do you think about that?
I love that. Like it's so funny. People don't know that we don't really know each other so well yet. And one of the biggest things why we wanted to have this discussion is because we both have this innate love of emotions and different things and bring a different perspective. And so your initial, okay, like I'm going to high five this emotion. I'm going to high five what's going on inside. I do a similar thing with my clients. I'm like, just say it. Oh, cool. Like, thank you for showing up. And it's really this space of understanding there's wisdom in our bodies. Most people are very disconnected from their brain to their body. It's like everything that you're feeling from here down, if it's not acceptable, let's shut it down. And so that whole, like, I like the high five even better than the, okay, cool. How are you doing? Thank you so much. But there's it removes the shame. It removes this fight with yourself by just taking that pause, right? And then saying, high five, it's okay that you showed up here. Now, what are we going to do now that you're my friend instead of my enemy? So that's really awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Now that you're my friend instead of my enemy, right? Because we are resistant to it. We feel like we don't know what to do with it. And so we just, want it to go away. And allowing it to be your friend allows you to have a conversation with it. And I know this sounds very hokey, but an out loud processor. It's the root of journaling. Some people like to journal with it. But having that conversation of like, hey, you're here, what's your message for me, allows you to sort of figure out what it's trying to tell you. Because I believe that those, and we've talked about it, emotions are messages, right? From your inner knowing. And so I actually do have a conversation. I do the high five. Hey, you're here. I hear you. What's going on? And I imagine a conversation back and forth, and then anger might say something like, oh my God, I can't believe that thing happened, or that person treated you that way, or you witnessed this thing. That is just not cool. That is just not okay. And then, we'll actually go back and forth, and I'll start figuring out, okay, I am upset because X happened. Now I can start figuring out, okay, X is what I care about so much. Like other people being hurt is what I care about so much, or me not having a voice is what I care about so much, whatever it is. And I can start thinking about, okay, what action steps am I going to pour that rocket fuel on in order to live my values?
Mm-hmm. I just want to point out what you said again for everybody, because it is the biggest thing here, which is emotions are messages. I think it's been explained for a really long time that emotions are energy in motion, so E plus motion, right? And it absolutely is, because it's a current, right, that's moving through us. However, that current's going to keep on coming back and back and back until we get the message. They really are messengers, like, hey, pay attention here. This could actually make your life better. So if we turned and we thought of anger as an emotion that could make our lives better instead of worse, I mean, that's how I think you and I both feel about it. It's like, oh, yay, anger is here. I'm gonna be able to be launched somewhere. I'm gonna be able to get clarity of a choice that will actually make my life better. Then we don't feel like it's here to destroy, and we don't use it to destroy others or ourselves. So I'm really going into that message of anger or other emotions are messengers and have messages, information for us is so key. I love that. Thank you.
Well, I want to reiterate something that you just said, which I think is another really important topic, is that you mentioned that the energy just keeps coming back. And
Mhm.
I think that's critical to understand, because for so much of our lives, we have been shoving down that anger. No, go away. I don't want to express to you. I don't want to be bad. And so we do shove it down, and it stays there, just like you said, like that energy and that current stays there. And then we keep shoving on top of that, and it starts to end up like a pressure pot, right?
Yeah.
And then that's where some of the fear comes with anger, is that loss of control.
Mhm.
Because when you have a pressure pot and you start, really increasing that pressure, some of it's going to leak out, and you could end up living against your values. You could end up taking actions that go against your values. And then that on the other side of that comes shame, or some
Mhm.
other difficult emotion. And so the key to not letting that pressure build up is to actually process it and to
Mhm.
go through that message, like you said, so that we can allow that energy to flow through us and to release. And
Yes.
one of the cool things is that we can do this exact same process with old anger. Have you
Mhm.
ever worked with your clients on doing the process with old anger? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would love for you to explain your process with it. Absolutely. A lot of people have pent up old anger, right? That's not just destroying their self-esteem, but it's also, you go to a doctor and they'll say, oh, that's caused by stress. Well, stress, you going back to your pressure pot, is like this thing that's the seams are being stressed, right? There's pressure on them. They're about ready to break. That doesn't just happen in your self-esteem, it happens in your physical body, illness, your relationships, your finances, all over the place. Like pent up anger can destroy. So it's really important to go back to the past, but I'd love to know what you were going to share there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I teach people to process emotions as they come, because
Hmm.
I find that's the easiest first step. And I have a 3-step process. And the 3 steps are welcome it, be with it, let it go.
Hmm.
And it can take minutes or it can take days, depending on what it is you're welcoming. But what I mean by old anger is like sometimes I might be lying in bed. That's when it most often comes up, or in the shower, any moment where I'm quiet.
Hmm.
Some old hurt will come up, and I'll be lying there in bed being like, oh, this thing that happened 5 years ago with my mom or whatever, I'm still really mad about that. I can't believe she said that thing, and I can't believe this happened or she treated me like that. And I'm just lying there thinking about it, not sleeping.
Hmm.
And so that's what I like call old anger. It's just sitting there in my body being like, hey, I have a message, process me. And
Hmm.
so in those moments where they pop up, that's when I can be like, oh, okay, I need to process it. And so I can say while I'm lying in bed, hey, anger, okay, I hear you. High five. Thanks for showing up and reminding me that I care so much about something. And start having that conversation. Why are you here? What are you telling me? What happened that day that made me so angry? And start figuring out what it is that I actually really care about and what message it is. And
Hmm.
then I can sit there with that anger and just like be with it and honor it and be like, oh, thank you so much for showing up today. That really makes me understand exactly what it is that bothered me in that moment and exactly what it is I need to do about it. And the do about it is actually sort of a follow-on thing that starts going into boundaries, which we're going to talk about later. But then I can just, thanks for being here and let it go and go
Hmm.
to sleep. And so that's what I mean by processing old anger, those old feelings that kind of come up randomly as
Hmm.
you're going through your day. And just allowing them that energy to come out of your pressure pot. And when you start doing this regularly, you start finding, oh my goodness, all of a sudden I feel lighter. All of a sudden I feel happier.
Hmm.
All of a sudden I can breathe easier because that stress, like you were talking about at the seams, just seems to be relieving itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because I find that a lot of people get this pressure on their chest, like they can't breathe very well. And it's all that's just pressing on you that you feel like you can't move and be in your life. The one thing that I was going to ask you is when you're doing this processing, whether it's in bed or in the shower, do you do it in your head? Do it out loud? How is that processing happening for you?
Yeah, I think it's completely individual.
Okay.
It depends on who's around me.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So whether it's in my head or out loud, I have a friend who does the exact same process, but she journals it.
Uh-huh.
I have a friend who does a similar process, but they do it in art.
Hmm.
I have a friend who does a similar process, but he's very physical. And
Hmm.
so he actually goes to his heavy bag, and that's the only way that he can process it. And he's actually talking to anger out loud with his heavy bag. And he's like, oh, I'm so mad at this. And he like it's so funny because he'll go back and be like, yeah, I know, like it's really wrong that this thing happened. And I can't believe that they said this. And so they actually process it out loud. And the key is like, so I'm talking about, the first part, the anger part, that I can't believe that this happened. But the key is to start talking about um, sort of what that means to you. And so it's like, I can't believe that this happened. Yeah, I'm really upset because that person hurt my feelings. And it's like, well, why did it hurt your feelings? Or why was it so upsetting? Well, because it was in front of everybody else. And I feel like this conversation should be done in private. Oh, okay, so you value respect. Yeah, that was disrespectful of them. Okay. So you want to have these conversations, these tough conversations, but you want them to be done in a respectful way. Or yes, I do want to be open and I want it to be done. And so having those conversations back and forth, which I do out loud if I can, uh,
Hmm.
allows me to figure out and get really confident about my next step.
Mhm.
Whereas if I didn't have those conversations, I would probably just avoid that person
Yeah.
completely because I'm like, oh, they disrespected me. I don't respect them now and screw them. And then I
Mhm.
hold that anger in. And then every time I see them, I'm angry again. Whereas having processed it out loud, I can now, okay, I know what matters. I know the words that I need to say, and I can go and have that conversation with that person.
Yeah, I love that. I think the big piece for me, and I like how you said there were so many different ways of processing it, but it was so many ways that were outside the body because what so many people do is they have this dialogue in their brain. And so it just is, it's almost like you're still keeping the pressure nozzle closed, it's staying inside, it's bouncing around. As soon as you either paint it out, sing it out, punch it out,
Right.
talk it out, journal it out, whatever it is, all of a sudden is outside the body.
Mm,
And the body is actually part of the processing. Instead of us just living from this 1/8 of our body, we're living from the entire body. Even if like you're voicing it, because all of a sudden you're using your mouth, you're using your ears, all the cells of your entire body hear it. And I love one of the things that you pointed out is really going so deep that you realize what you really need, what you really care about. And a little bit of different words for me is like, what is the choice that I wasn't allowing myself to make in that moment? Because whether you go back and process it with the other person or not, realizing in your scenario, I could actually walk out and just go, we're going to have this conversation later, in a different place, or just walk. Like I give myself permission to have my own back in all situations. I don't need for the other person to change for me to feel good. And so I think for me, it's always going to that level of what choice didn't I allow myself to make in that scenario that could have made me feel safe and secure.
oh my goodness, that is so powerful. I love that so much. You're completely empowering yourself to love yourself and to make different choices in future situations and to give yourself the permission to do whatever it is that's in alignment with your values, whether that is talking to them or whether that's something completely different. Oh, I just felt that with my entire body. That is such a beautiful sentiment. Yes, absolutely. And I hadn't really put together the moving it outside of your body, but you're absolutely right. Like that you notice that. That is so true. And such, especially with anger, I find that it's very physical and it almost begs you to move. It begs you to, it's a central nervous system emotion, right? Like they all are, but this one specifically is very, very triggering to your central nervous system, and it wants you to move it through your body in ways that involve movement. I love that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's why I think it's so much fun because it's like if you actually use it, like even if you in the very beginning, you just use it for movement. I'm like, do erratic movement. If you can get into a private space where nobody's paying attention to you and you just like a dog does, like they shake, they shake their whole body, whatever it is. A lot of times I also say to people, do a silent scream like you do in yoga, where you stick your tongue out and it's just like I think it's called dragon's breath. Right. Yeah. It's like just get it all out there. And you can do that in the car. You can do that in your house. Nobody's going to know, but it moves some of that out so that you can get to some of the other messages. Because at the moment of the anger, like the full intensity of anger, I don't think that we have access to that reasoning skills. So we need to use some of it just to move, which is fun too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that at the moment of anger, we don't have access, right? Those are two completely different parts of your brain. You have your emotional center and you have your reasoning center, and the emotional center shuts down that reasoning center, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's a really important point, is getting to a place where you can process it. And there's, all sorts of different methods for you to do that. And um, I love that point because some people might feel disappointed in themselves that they can't process right away, or that it's not working. And that's not true at all. That's the sort of be with it moment where it's like, I just have to be angry for a little while, and let it out before I'm ready to start that processing piece.
Yeah, absolutely. High five and let's go. Just let's tango for a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes you can just high five and let's go, and sometimes you have to move it for, like, do that
Yeah.
punching bag for a little while, do that scream, do that movement before you're ready to talk, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I guess I was meaning even just like high five and let's go, like let's scream it out or whatever in the process. Yeah. We're not getting to the other pieces that you were saying. So yeah, there's just so much with anger, and I hope that everybody who's viewing this can get as excited as we do in the moments of anger. You know, it's not just outside of those moments where you can be excited about anger, but it's in it when it's showing up. It's like, this is for me. It's for me. And so, and then you can also get even a little bit of excited about all those people who are triggering you, because to me, triggers are actually catalysts.
Ooh.
So instead of that person constantly being a trigger or all these things like poking and prodding, it's like, this is something that the universe has used to catalyze me, to move me, to get me clearer on my intentions, to get me more whole in myself and more embodied. And so when you look at that, you go, oh gosh, okay, so this person's really ticking me off right now. But how are they catalyzing me into more of my own being, or into more of my choices, my life, in a way that if they weren't around, I would be complacent. So,
Oh, I think that, yes, I would be complacent. So it's catalyzing you into action.
yeah.
Yeah, that is such a different way to look at that person who's irritating you, right? Or that's,
Mhm.
going against your values.
Yeah,
Love that. And yeah, it's so empowering because they're showing you your true self. They're showing you through anger what you really care about to allow you to take those actions that you wouldn't otherwise take. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So, final message for our group, Tara. What do you have to say as a final message about anger?
Have some fun with it. I would absolutely go to that space of feeling it out, right? High-fiving it, saying, hey, cool, thank you so much for showing up for me. And just process this. If you need to listen to this interview conversation that we just had 5 times before you feel it in yourself, allow yourself to do that, because this is a really, really different take on it. But we'd love to know from you guys out there how it's processing for you, if it's making your life different, and if this is something that you feel is useful. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we just had a really cool comment in the chat talking about how this works with our kids. And so we've been talking about us processing it, but it's also really important, as we facilitate, as we work with our children, to understand how they're processing it too, and allow them to work through it. Realize that at the beginning, they're probably not in a place to be rational. They're probably not wanting to hear those words that we said at the beginning. Stop yelling, don't do that, calm down, be quiet, right? We want to enable them to process in ways that are healthy. And in order to enable them to do that, we have to figure that out for ourselves, right? And
Yeah.
so once we figure that, man, this anger is our friend, and this anger in our kids is our friend too, because remember we were talking about that shame. Having our kids be angry and having our kids display anger triggers a whole bunch of parenting shame. Oh no, everyone's gonna think I'm a bad parent if my kid is the one losing it in the playgroup, right? So allowing us to learn how to process it, for it to be our friends, for it to be our children's friends, for us to high five together with our kids saying, hey kid, anger showed up, high five to you, and walk them through that process, is going to create that ripple effect for the next generation.
No, I love that so much. And I think it's so key to give them space, and also to mirror it, right? To in the moment to be like, this is really making me angry right now. And allowing our kids to even say, like my kids will say to me, hey mom, what's up? You're off. And I always thank them. I'm like, hey, thanks for letting me know that I was off my center, and I'm going to take some space to just hang with this for a minute. And instead of hiding the fact that we also get angry or feel shameful about these emotions, and us mirroring that, like you were saying in a minute ago, but also giving them space to just be in it instead of asking them to go from, 1,000 to zero in a few seconds. It's not a kindness to ask for something like that.
It's also asking them to shut it down, right? Which is
Yeah, it is.
against.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Tara, so tell us a little bit about who you are.
So I am an art of being facilitator and I am an educator. So I actually train other people to be personal development coaches. That's the easiest way to say it. But I call it the art of being because it is an art to being ourselves. It's not a science. There's not a 5-step process, and what somebody else does isn't necessarily what you need to do in order to honor yourself. So I help people to do that in private sessions, and then I also train others to help them. And the biggest piece to that is emotions, and then the other piece is creating a new language. I really feel like the words that we use are powerful, and so replacing certain words with more powerful words that align with you, like changing out trigger for catalyst, absolutely changes the relationship. I think that a lot of people who are doing work outside of this, they're looking at the individual, and I'm always looking at the relationship. So even if you're in a relationship with somebody who feels like they're hurting you, how do you use that for your own power? And then possibly, how do you use that in a way that actually creates a more healthy relationship? So yeah,
Wow.
that's what I do. How about you? What do you do, Kristina?
Yeah, I love that. Everything you do just sounds so empowering. So I am Kristina. I am the creator of the Mind BS method, and I help busy parents find joy in chaos, find joy in their chaos so that they can back away from burnout. And that is really my passion, is that parents seem to grind themselves into the ground, trying to be the most amazing parents that they can be. And that is just the most beautiful thing. But it's actually modeling for our kids sacrifice as love. And it's super, super challenging for parents because parents can't use the traditional methods of self-care and of burnout recovery because they have so many responsibilities. They can't get away. And so parents need a different solution. They need things that they can do while they're parenting, while they're working, while they're tending to all of their responsibilities. And so the Mind BS method combines cognitive learning, sort of like we're talking about today, with somatic learning, which is that getting in touch with your body so that you can very, very quickly start having results using very short time periods, like 5 seconds at a time, 10 minutes at a time, in order to allow them to live their best life now. Because it breaks my heart when parents tell me, oh, it's fine. I've got, kids. I will do my dreams when I retire. I will do my I will be happy, or I will be able to have space for myself and be able to fill myself when the kids move out. And that's just sad for me because I want all parents to model for kids how to live happy right now so that our kids think it's normal to fill their own cups and to have relationships that nurture them and to have healthy boundaries. So that was a very long explanation of what I do. And so I work with them in a group program exclusively because I just love the dynamic of the group. I love other parents, seeing other parents in exactly the same place they are so that they can all learn from each other. I believe everybody has something to bring to the table.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you went a little bit long on it. Like I think both of us need to. We're so much more than just a one-liner, right? And so are all the people who are watching. You're so much more than a one-liner. You need to know the depth of the work that we do, and we want to know the depth of who each of the people who are listening are. So
Yes,
awesome.
absolutely. So if you want to get in touch with us, we will put our information in the description. And if you are interested in learning more about anything that we do or anything that is confusing you around emotions or around boundaries or around overwhelm, please put them in the comments and we will come back with another episode addressing that. Bye. Join me in my Blissfully Busy Facebook group to see if we can figure out how to dodge burnout together.